What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi with a brand new deck profile video. This time I was showing my brand new green wind attribute deck, which is a Symphonic Warrior Gusto mix. The two don't really have a tremendous amount of synergy at first glance, but after playtesting and a lot of research, I found a couple of combos that makes this deck not only work, but at certain times flourish beyond anything I expected. Let's see where this goes. Since the Gusto engine is so much larger than the Symphonic engine, I'm going to start with that. Starting off with the triple Gusto Eggle. Eggle as a 1-star tuner says if it's destroyed by battle and sent to grave, you can special summon a level 4 lower non-tuner Gusto monster from the deck. One of which could be, but I would not recommend, Gusto Griffin, which is a 2-star non-tuner who has the ability that says if it's sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can special summon any Gusto monster from your deck. The monster you would want to pull off of Eggle would most likely be Winda, Priestess of Gusto, if it's your opponent's turn. If it's destroyed by battle with an opponent's attacking monster, you get to special summon another Gusto from your deck, a tuner monster specifically. And my recommendation on that part would be another Eggle, or if you wanted to, you could go for a Guldos first. Gusto Guldos says if it's destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a level 2 or lower Gusto monster from your deck, which would be a Winda or an Eggle, and I'd recommend an Eggle if it's your turn. Now, with it being a 3-star tuner, though, it's also a perfect counterpart with the triple Pilica, the recent addition to the Gusto deck. And its ability is that when it's normal or special summon, you can target a wind tuner monster in your grave and special summon it to the field in defense with its effects negated. And after you pull off all those fancy moves, you can use Camp Serenity of Gusto for the cleanup procedures. Once per turn, you can return 2 Gusto monsters from your graveyard to the main deck and draw 1 card. Next, we move into the Symphonic Warrior engine, which while small, is still very powerful. Starting off with Symphonic Warrior bases. Once per turn, you can target a Symphonic Warrior monster on your side of the field and increase its level equal to the number of cards in your hand. And you can also do this not only while it's on the field, but if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and do the exact same thing. And with it being a 1-star tuner, that means you have a variety of options to pick with if you happen to choose him specifically. Now, Symphonic Warrior Piano, on the other hand, has a slightly less useful effect, but being a 3-star tuner is what makes it more valuable in my opinion. You can declare a monster type and select a face-up Symphonic Warrior monster on the field, and the monster becomes that type. And this change is permanent, by the way. You can use this effect while it's face-up on the field once per turn, or you can banish it out of the graveyard to do it as well. Now, Symphonic Warrior Guitar is honestly the best card out of the Symphonic Warrior engine that they have released thus far. Reason being is because you can discard a card and special summon a Symphonic Warrior from your deck, except another copy of himself. And you can only use this effect once per turn, but this is its Pendulum scale effect. Its normal effect is that when it's normal summoned, you can target a Symphonic Warrior in the grave and special summon it. As you can see, the deck does rely a little bit on its normal summoning capabilities, but it does use a very unusual special summoning and modulation system, which is also further enhanced by the effect of Synths. It actually has 3 different effects. You can target a Symphonic Warrior monster from your deck and put it in your hand when it's flipped, and once per turn, you can target a Symphonic Warrior monster in the graveyard and turn this monster into that as far as its name and effects. And if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it, special summon a banished Symphonic Warrior monster. And then we move to the Symphonic Warrior mics, which is the low scale of 1 as opposed to the high scale of 7 on Symphonic Warrior Guitar. Now, its scale only remains 1 as long as there's another Symphonic Warrior monster in the opposing Pendulum scale. Otherwise, it becomes 4. But once per turn during your end phase, you get to target a banished Symphonic Warrior and put it in your hand. So it does refill you for next turn, provided you can survive that long. Now, its monster effect is what I consider the most valuable of it. After you normal summon or special summon this monster, you can gain an additional normal summon during the turn that you do this. Next, we move into the minimal spell lineup. 1 copy of Emergency Teleport, which lets you special summon a level 3 or lower Psychic from your hand or deck, but during the end phase you do this, you have to banish it. Contact with Gusto requires you to return 2 Gusto monsters in your graveyard to your deck, and then you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Quill Pen of Guldos is essentially Gusto support, but not Gusto in name. And that's because you target 2 wind monsters in your graveyard and a card on the field, shuffle your grave targets into the deck, and then you get to return the third target back to the hand. Also, I'm running double Twin Twisters for 2 reasons. One, because MST, while very good, does not do enough for this deck, so Twin Twisters is kind of necessary. And it allows me to drop one of the copies of Gusto Griffin that I happen to have in my hand in the event that I don't have Symphonic Warrior guitars. And then we move into the minimal trap lineup, starting with the single copy of Bottomless Trap Hole, pretty much generic staple in every deck I run. Triple Call the Haunted. I honestly wanted to run the Gusto trap cards in this deck, which allow me to perform more special summons, but because they require more Gusto monsters in the graveyard than I normally have allotted to me, especially with the other monsters and spells that I use to return them back to the deck, this card is actually much more valuable and easier to use in this mixed build. And of course, the single Solemn Warning, which is stable in pretty much everyone's deck now. Next we move into the side deck, which is standardized aside from the cards that I only run 2 copies of in the main deck anyways, or less. Starting off, we have the Symphonic Warrior Basis, the second copy of it, as well as the third copy of Winda, Priestess of Gusto, the second copy of Symphonic Warrior Piano, and as much as it breaks my heart, the third copy of Symphonic Warrior Synths. But I am still running double Dark Hole, double MST in the event that I need more Spell Trap Destruction, Compulsory, Fiendish Chain, double Memory Loss, Storming Mirror Force, which I prefer to run this over the regular Mirror Force for obvious reasons, not just because it fits the theme, but because it has an overall better effect. When the opponent's monster declares an attack, all the attack position monsters they have go back to their hand. And Torrential Tribute. And then we finally finish up with the extra deck, which is fairly diverse even though it's all wind attribute. First off, we have Old Entity Hastor, a generic 4-star synchro. I barely summon it, but its effects are too good to pass up compared to some of the other wind attribute synchros I can run at level 4. If it's sent from the monster zone to the grave, you can target a monster your opponent controls. This card becomes Fiendish Chain. And if this card leaves the field while equipped to an opponent's monster, then that monster becomes yours. So it's a fun card to use. Then we have the 5-star Gusto Goldos. Once per turn, you can shuffle 2 Gusto monsters from your grave into the main deck, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and destroy it. Not the greatest destruction effect, obviously, but well enough that it requires 2 of this to be in the deck. Next, we move into the Gusto Sprees. When it's synchro summoned, you can add a Gusto card in your graveyard back to your hand, which means that you basically get your Contact with Gusto, or if you wanted to, your Pilica, which is what I do more often than not. As long as this card is face up on the field, it cannot be destroyed by battle, and your opponent takes all battle damage with Gusto monsters. I also run 1 Stardust Charge Warrior because that additional draw is very useful, and being able to attack all your opponent's special summon monsters once each is okay, but this thing doesn't have the attack points to be able to go over all of them, and there's nothing generic that I can think of to run in this deck that would allow it to go over all my opponent's monsters. Now, Clearwing Synchro Dragon is a personal tech choice that I just didn't want to give up, because it's too good. We all know what it does. When a level 5 or higher monster on the field activates its effect, or if a level 5 or higher monster is targeted for a card effect, you can just negate it, destroy it, and if this card destroyed any card with its own effect, it gains the attack points of that monster. Until the end of the turn, of course. Now, Gusto Eggles. Once per turn during your end phase, you can banish a wind monster from your grave to target a face-down card your opponent controls and destroy it. Then, of course, we run the 1 Stardust Dragon, which is a fairly good generic 8-star in my opinion. We all know what it does. If a card effect is activated that would destroy a card or cards on the field, you can tribute it, negate the effect, and then you get it back during your end phase. Now, Mistworm, I don't summon it very often, and I'm honestly debating on taking it out of the deck, but on the few instances that I have been able to call it out, this card has won me games. When synchro summoned, you target up to 3 cards your opponent controls and return them to the hand. Then moving into the Xyz monsters, we have the single Totem Bird. 2 level 3 wind monsters, you can double detach to negate a spell or trap. But if it has no materials, you have to decrease its attack by 300. Then we move into the 4-star Xyz monsters. Castel the Skyblaster Musketeer, double detach to return a card, face-up card on the field into the deck, or single detach, target a face-up card on the field and change it to face-down defense position. Daigusto Emerald, target 3 monsters in the grave, shuffle all 3 into the deck, and draw a card. It's basically just another version of Cam, and I don't summon it too often, but on the few instances that I do, it does give me a very valuable draw. And Lightning Chidori. This card's not very good when you compare it to cards like Castel, but the fact that you have 2 immediate returns to the deck makes it much better. When it's summoned, you return a set card your opponent controls to the bottom of the deck, and you can attach a material, target a face-up card your opponent controls, and return it to the top of the deck. And then a ranked 7 Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosack. You can attach a material, special summon 2 tokens of 3 stars each, which means you can also use them for synchro material if you wanted to. And once per turn, you contribute a Mecha Phantom Beast to target a card on the field and destroy it, but this card cannot attack the turn you do that. And that is the deck. As you can clearly tell, this deck is still very much in the beta stages because not only do I not have all the cards necessary to complete it right now, the build is still very shaky and a little clunky. But like I said before, it shows amazing promise, and when I get the right combos off, it can flourish beyond anything I expected it to. I hope you guys like the deck profile, and if you can think of anything I can do to improve this little deck, especially with this one still technically being in the beta stages, please feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
What's the next stage? What's the next stage?